Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. I have a very important person today on the channel. Please, can you just kindly introduce yourself?
My name is Pauline Fisher, and I'm an enthusiastic and passionate sustainability professional.
Okay. Can you just give us what does that mean to a layman's, somebody who is not a professional, to a layman's language? Can you break it down so that people can understand?
So my background is that I studied architecture, and I am a professional senior architectural technologist, and working in the building industry and the residential industry. In 2011, the SANS 10400 Part XA was introduced, which is forms part of our building regulations, and that required that any new buildings that we designed had to have an energy efficiency audit done on the glazing and on the roof installation, and also on the electricity consumption, annual consumption and demand. And those calculations and audits had to be submitted with our building plans for the new builds, for the plans to be approved. And then going on there, in 2016, I then heard about the Green Building Council of South Africa started to introduce the certification of existing buildings. So you would have your star rating, and then they introduced what they called an EDGE certification. The EDGE certification is for the preliminary construction and the post-construction. And I then did the exam to become an EDGE expert, because I was very keen to get involved in anything that could help our buildings to become more energy efficient, sustainable energy efficiency, so that we are reducing the amount of reliance that we have on our natural resources. And by doing that, we are then able to provide electricity to areas that can't afford electricity, sustainable electricity, things like solar.
Okay.
And then from being an EDGE expert, in December of 2020, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, who are the custodians of the energy resources for this country, legislated that 4 categories of buildings were mandated to undergo energy performance certificates. So you would have to display an energy performance certificate.
Okay, don't go into that, because I'm going to actually ask you about that so that you can give us an in-depth explanation of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are a professional, and you're more like an authority in green energy and all those things. Why did you choose that? And then what inspired you to get into that sector?
I think what inspired me was that when load shedding started back in those days, mid 2000s, it started. I began making sure that our buildings and electricity was becoming more and more of a problem. So when SANS introduced the XA, where we had to do the audits on the fenestration and the insulation and electricity, my whole aim was to try and design these buildings so that they are future-proof. And in order for it to be future-proof, you need to ensure that the buildings that you are designing are fully sustainable. So small things like your windows, for example. We always used timber and we used steel windows. especially in the lower income areas. You know, they all use the steel windows because the steel window frames are your cheaper ones.
Okay.
But if you stand next to that window frame and you put your hand up in winter, you can feel the draft coming through.
Okay.
And so that's what really encouraged me, was to make sure that we are able to encourage people to future-proof their homes.
Okay, beautiful. Now let's go back to let's get into the main details now. What is EPC? And give us an in-depth explanation of what EPC means.
So an EPC is an energy performance certification.
Okay.
And basically, if I can just show you, this is what an EPC looks like.
Okay.
So, you know, the gradings, so from green down to red obviously being not as efficient, and the green being very energy efficient, the building. You will this is the certificate that you will receive after we've done the certification. And where it came in was that the DMRE mandated that the 4 classifications of buildings from December 2020 privately owned over 2,000 square meters and public buildings over 1,000 square meters. They would have to employ at that stage an accredited inspection body, and they would then have to do their assessment of the building and then work out what your rating is based on that graph, whether you receive an A rating, which is very good, or a G rating, which is very bad. And how it works is that your EPC is only valid for 5 years. So the theory behind it, and the theory is that there's a national building register of existing buildings that SANEDI, who are the custodians of that, are maintaining and developing. So the theory is that we know that our new buildings from 2011 are energy efficient because we can't design them and get them approved from council without them being energy efficient. So, but we don't know what our existing buildings' energy efficiencies are, and we can't then have a baseline for the country to work towards if we don't know what that baseline is. So the DMRE appointed SANEDI to be the custodians of this National Building Register for these buildings, to make sure that we start working towards understanding what our total energy efficiency is in buildings. You know, I think worldwide, we need to save 35% of our energy efficiency in buildings in order to start looking in existing buildings, in order to start looking towards becoming more carbon neutral. And most countries in the world have actually signed the agreement that they will be zero carbon neutral in 2050.
Okay.
And so if you want to measure that, you need some sort of a database to be working off. And that is why the EPCs were introduced, to start getting our existing buildings onto databases.
Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for that explanation. Now, somebody's listening to you now and they hear what you're saying. So who or what institution, who are those that are required to have this EPC certificate? Is it government? Is it individuals? Who are they? Is it public companies? Is it business? Can you just tell us who those people that are required to have these certificates?
So the EPC relates to the square meterage of 4 categories of buildings. So when we design buildings, we have to allocate a category to it. So for example, you have an A1, which is your entertainment, So those type of things are where you eat, you drink, you dance, casinos, those type of things. And then you've got your A2, which is your public assembly, your theatres, your movie houses,
churches,
indoor, not churches.
Okay.
Churches have their own classification.
Okay.
And also your indoor sports arenas.
Okay.
Those ones also have to have it. And then your A3, which is your education facilities, your places of instruction. Okay. So it would be your primary schools, your high schools, and also your tertiary education facilities, your universities, your colleges. And then the last category that is required for EPCs is your G1, which is your offices. So you would have your multi-story offices and also your standalone office parks, also form part of G1. And in between that, you've got a whole lot of other classifications. You've got your industrial buildings, your shopping centers, you've got your churches, as you mentioned. Okay. And each one of those have got their own classification. But the DMRE decided that they were only going to do these 4 categories that I've mentioned.
Okay. And
the square meters is what determines whether you're in that category and whether you have to do it. Is if you're, say for example, you've got a action sport arena where they do indoor sports and you fall under A2, then, or a gym, like a gym that people go to work out at, that like Virgin Active or Planet Fitness or something like that. Then if they are privately owned and they are over 2,000 square meters, then they are required to have an EPC by the legislation. You then have your public or government buildings, so places like your police stations, your Department of Public Works, and your I'm thinking of also your prisons, those type of things that the Department of Public Works owns, because they actually own the most buildings in the country. I think they've got 90,000 buildings that the Department of Public Works owns, which includes your clinics. Those ones also, if they're over 1,000 square meters, and they fall into those 4 categories, they would also have to have an EPC certificate done. There's been a lot of tenders that have come out in the last 2 years where the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy mandated all of the municipalities to lead the EPC legislation. But you know, with the intent was there, but it's been difficult to get the actual tenders appointed. And I think that it was good that they made that decision, because what happened is that a lot of the government departments have, by putting the tenders out, it's made them all aware and educated them on what EPCs are and how it works. You know, I don't know if you want to talk about the benefits of the EPCs, or we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about it later. Okay. Let's look at, so what about if I have, so my property is residential and I have maybe like a 4,000 square meter. Does EPC apply to such person?
No, because your domestic dwellings are an H4, and your residences, so for example, if you have apartments, they're an H3. So their classification is not in those 4. And if you overseas in the UK, because obviously the EPCs have been are mandated and legislated in other countries. So for example, the UK have had it for a few years, and you are not, and it applies to domestic residents. Okay. So if you sell your house, it's part of your occupation certificates that you need to have. And I think that the DMRE, that's where they're aiming for, and we will get there, and they will start including more classifications into the equation. But currently, with the accreditation, accredited inspection bodies, in 2 years there were only 20 accredited inspection bodies, because to become a SANAS accredited inspection body took a very long time to put everything together and get accredited, and also it was very expensive to actually be accredited. So these 4 classifications of buildings in South Africa, there's about 250,000 to 350,000 buildings that fall into those categories.
Wow!
But after 2 years, there were only 1,000 certificates that had been issued by the accredited inspection bodies. And so the DMRE changed the regulation this year, in February, to say that we no longer will use accredited inspection bodies. You will now be allowed to issue EPCs if you're an EPC registered professional, so individuals. And then you will then be able to register but to be a registered professional, you would need to understand, you would need to be an electrical engineer, an architect, a technologist, somebody that understands what's required in the EPC. So they then said from the 31st of August, then the EPC registered professionals would be able to issue the certificates.
Okay.
So there is a bit of an overlap at the moment going on while this is happening, because SANEDI is busy developing that. But for example, I submitted my application to SANEDI to be registered 2 weeks ago, and within a week I was registered as a EPC registered professional. And now I can individually issue the EPCs.
Okay, beautiful. So which means anybody who wants anything to do with EPC, the proper person to issue the certificate. Now, somebody will now, on top of his head, will say, okay, what is the cost and what is the requirement? What are my costs and what do I require to come to you for you to issue the certificate?
So, with the certificates, the way that we calculate the fee structure is that we have a base cost. So for example, if you're looking at a government building and it's 1,000 square meters, our base cost would be 7,500 for the certificate. Then what would happen is that if it was, for example, 1,900, that additional 900 square meters, that would then be charged at a rate of 2 Rand a square meter. So then if it's 2,000 square meters, we would then start with a base fee of 10,000 and then an additional 2 Rand a square meter for every amount after that. But you get buildings that will be 50,000 square meters, but most of them will fall between 2,000 and 10,000. The bigger ones, we would look at that as an individual project and we wouldn't apply the 2 Rand a square meter. We would make it a lot more affordable and design our fee structure around the client and negotiate that for the larger amounts.
Okay, beautiful. So very soon you're going to have to tell us all the company information, how to contact you, emails, phone number, and all those things. But before then, where do you see EPC in the next 5 years or 10 years here in South Africa? Where do you see it?
So in my opinion, I think that with the correct marketing and education and understanding of the public, it could really be a beneficial tool for building owners, because what it does is that it creates your baseline, And you then understand, we work out your kilowatt hours per square meter per annum. And it creates an awareness of your electricity usage. So as a building owner, you get an account from the municipality every month telling you that's your electricity, this is what your rates account is. You don't really go in and look and see what your electricity usage is. By doing the EPC, you now have an understanding of your usage. And within the 5 years before the certificate expires and you've got to reassess, you then have that opportunity to install interventions that would then help you to get a better rating. And so in my mind, in the next 5 years, 10 years, I'm hoping that it does go down and work through to the residential properties, because that will encourage building owners and residential property owners to become hyper aware of what their electricity usage is. And also, when we do the EPCs, we will give a closeout report. And in that closeout report, we make recommendations of what interventions you can actually put in place to improve your rating. And for example, if you've got an office block and you have a tenant even, now you could be selling it or you could be leasing it. If you have an office block and you're looking in Sandton for an office block, for an office to rent or to buy, and you've got two buildings a few blocks away from each other. The one building has an EPC certificate up and it shows that it's got a B rating, which is very good, very energy efficient. And you've got the other building, which is exactly comparable in square meterage and in area and locality, but it doesn't have any of the interventions that the other one has. It's got a rating of a G rating, which is your worst rating. As a person buying the property or renting the property, you're obviously going to say, well, I'm going to rent or buy the property that's got the B rating, because I know then that I'm not going to be paying as much monthly on my rates accounts because it's efficient.
Okay.
And that's where building owners start to see the benefit of having a good rating with your EPCs.
Okay, so do we have, like what you have explained to us, now you're giving us benefits of it. Do we have more benefits? And then is it a mandatory? Is it a must that we must have it?
It is a must for those 4 categories. It is legislated and compulsory and mandated. And the legislation says that these 4 categories, which is, as I mentioned, is 250,000 to 350,000 buildings, have to have their EPC in place. Originally, it was by the 7th of December 2022. It has been extended by 3 years to give people more of a chance to get their EPCs in place. Okay. So now the new deadline is the 7th of December 2025. If you don't have it in place, the penalties that are legislated, that the DMRE are allowed to impose on building owners that do not comply by then, is 5 million rand, 5 years in jail, or both.
Wow.
Per building.
Are you serious?
Per building.
5 million.
5 million rand, 5 years in jail, or both.
Okay, this is serious, eh?
It is serious. It is serious. And okay. I think, that the DMRE have already given an extension of 3 years to assist the building owners. But 2025 December comes very quickly.
Yes.
And I think the closer we get there, the more the registered professionals are going to be requested to get their EPCs in place. And they will, with that amount, there's more than likely going to be more buildings than professionals that will be able to have it in place by then. Okay. So I would encourage building owners to get their EPCs in place, start getting them in place now, before there's a massive bottleneck towards the end of 2025.
Okay. Now, obvious, in this industry, you probably have other competitors that are also in the industry. So how do you set, as a company, how do you guys set yourself apart from every other person who would want to issue this same certificate, why would everybody want to come to you to acquire their certificate?
We have set the business up that we have a professional architect, we have a mechanical engineer, we have myself as a senior architectural technologist, as well as a Green Building Council EDGE expert, and our mechanical engineer, that's part of our business, he's also been training all the architectural professionals and engineering professionals in energy sustainability. So before EPCs came in, that was his function. He is a sustainability professional. And then we also have an attorney that's in our business that can also ensure that everything that we do is cross-checked and made sure that we are following the current legislation and regulations. And the last person that we have involved on a management level is a professor of electrical engineering, and he's based in Cape Town. We have an office in Cape Town. We also have an office in Johannesburg. And for us, when we started out, we contracted he's a retired lecturer in architecture and in energy sustainability from the University of Pretoria to design a training program for energy assessors.
Okay.
So that we could, when the EPCs start to gain momentum, we can train the young graduates that are coming out from university. You know, I looked at the stats this morning. Of the age group of graduates between 15 and 25 in our country, 35% of them are unemployed.
Okay.
And for me, I'm passionate about training up these assessors, these young professionals, to get them into this type of industry and this type of career path, because there's so many opportunities available for them to get involved in this industry. You can be involved as an energy assessor, you can be on site, you can assist the energy professional that's going to register it by going and measuring up the buildings, going and checking the metering. We can get electricians involved, young electricians, get them trained up so that they can install the smart meters and the data loggers, because a lot of the buildings, for example, the government buildings, don't have the individual meters, the smart meters that are able to cut off, work out the different areas with the different occupancies. And we are then if they don't have it, we are required to go and put in data loggers for 12 months. That's another opportunity to train up, young electrical professionals and get them involved in that side of things. Then if they don't have building plans, we need to get young drafting professionals to go in and measure up the buildings. And then once we've done the EPCs and we've handed it to the building owner, we then have the opportunity to go in and get youngsters involved in doing the interventions to improve their ratings. Solar, LED lights, insulation, that type of thing. Wow. So for me, it would provide so much opportunity to these youngsters. Wow. To be able to get into this industry, and training the energy performance assessors. You don't have to have a degree. You just need to follow the training, and then you will be mentored by one of our professionals in the industry, and you will work your way up. And so those that can't afford to go and study because they don't have the means for it, we can take them in as eager students that have finished with matric but can't afford to go study.
Okay.
We can train them at ground roots and take them through the program.
Like an internship program.
Like an internship program,
Okay.
definitely.
So basically, you're not just a company that is making money, you're also creating employment.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Okay,
Absolutely.
that's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Now, let me ask you another question, which is what is the role of government in EPC, and what are some of the challenges you have in this industry?
So, the role of government is to ensure that we future-proof our economy.
Okay.
And for us to future-proof our economy, we need to ensure that we are energy sustainable, because without the energy, we have no means to produce any products, to do any sort of work. I just want to read you what they said, that what we said here. So this is the data from the ESCOM weekly status report that has shown the installation of the rooftop solar, which has doubled since July 2022. According to Business Tech, the pace of solar installations picked up significantly in 2023, where the country recorded 6,947 hours of planned power cuts or load shedding. You can't have an economy that has 6,947 hours of power cuts, because without having a consistent supply of electricity, you're not going to be able to assist this economy in the future. And that is my major concern, is that we have to try and help government to get to the point where we're starting to produce consistently without interruption.
Okay. And then what are the challenges that you probably might have faced, encountered, or you foresee?
On the EPC side, the challenges that we've had, we have gone out into industry, we have gone through, we've done golf days, we have done LinkedIn marketing programs, we have tried to contact the corporates, and a lot of them have been quite negative about the EPCs because they don't understand the benefits that it can be for them, with understanding what their baseline energy consumption is. And so a lot of them have said, well, we'll just wait and see what happens with when, what is the DMRE going to do to enforce their penalties. So we've received that sort of information, feedback, and sort of a wait and see what happens. And as I said, the DMRE have physically given a mandate to the municipalities to ensure that they have got their tenders out. And they have got their tenders out.
Okay.
But then the challenge that we had was that we had the elections this year.
Okay.
And with the elections, the last sort of 6 months before the elections, no tenders were being awarded in this particular environment. So I think for now, I think that we will start seeing that starting to progress. And I'm hoping that, the private sector also starts to see the benefits of the EPCs and how it can assist them to save money.
Okay.
Every month you will save money.
Yeah, okay. Now, if you look at Africa as a continent, we have about 1.4 billion people in Africa. Mm-hmm. It means that Africa, where we are now, we are able to consume whatever we produce because we have the market. Now, if you look at EPC here in South Africa, it means that other African countries will also require EPC. So my question will now be to you: are you ready for a collaboration with other African countries? And are you ready to also take this EPC from South Africa to other African countries?
I think that would definitely be something that would benefit other countries to see how, by introducing this EPC program in South Africa, and how it can benefit the sustainability of our electricity, and that would then allow them in their industries. I know there are a few countries that sit for 12 hours without electricity a day, and that's just standard. And being able to bring in the solar options and educate the people of other countries on how they can benefit from putting the solar in, how they can benefit from insulating their buildings, and just simple things like changing fluorescent lights to LED lights.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we have come to the end of this interview. So I want you to tell us the name of the company. Give us all the information. If somebody wants to reach you by email, by phone, by social media, just give us as much information for our viewers. Maybe they want to get an EPC certificate. If they want to reach you, if they want more questions, just give us everything that you have.
Okay. So our company is called Eco Audit SA. You can contact us on my cell phone number on 082 90 55512. I'm happy to have an online meeting with you. I'm happy to meet in person to discuss and assist you in anything that you need or any queries that you have with the EPCs. We have an office in Dunkeld West in Bompus Road in Johannesburg, and we also have an office in Greenpoint in Cape Town. And we have our webpage is www.ecoaudit.co.za. We have a LinkedIn page which you can also find us on, and we are happy to meet, and we're even happy to do a workshop. If a corporate contacts us and wants to educate their staff on it, we are happy to come through and do a one-day workshop and help them to get their staff to understand what EPCs are. We've done that before for other companies.
Okay, thank you so much.